This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of pop culture, or more so the lack of in 2025. And honestly, at least when it comes to the United States, I would argue that one of the big reasons it feels like there's so much division in the United States is we have lost a common sense of culture. And that's what I mean, like, culture still exists. But what I'm talking about is more pop culture, that popular culture where everybody is on the same page. And you really don't feel that anymore. You don't see that. And I think the best example of this would be, like Seinfeld. Seinfeld in the 90s is probably the biggest example of something that just really unified America. Seinfeld was basically just 9 seasons of the lunar moon landing, whatever that phrase is. But think about it. When it came to Seinfeld, for those under the age of 25, when I was born, when I watched Seinfeld, I was a kid, and I even still watched it, and I still enjoyed it, and I could still talk about Seinfeld with, like, other 9 and 10-year-olds. Sure, we didn't get, like, the more nuanced jokes, but what I'm saying is there was, like, a common thread that everybody was united, was connected by. So, people... Seinfeld would come up with, phrases that everybody would know, yada, 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 the master of your domain, the soup Nazi, things that people who are strangers even could share a laugh in, if you never even met somebody, you could just say, like, hello, in that weird Jerry Seinfeld voice, and people would understand, and you would draw the connection. And it's just so weird that nowadays, because cable TV is no longer relevant, and because everybody is on their own individual streaming services, and people aren't even watching streamers, like, Netflix, actual, like, high cost produced, high quality produced television shows that cost, like, money, versus things like Try Guys or whatever, which is a little less quality in terms of, production value. But what I'm trying to say is because nobody is watching the same thing, or because so many people are just watching their own things, you don't get that same sense of community, that same sense of togetherness. Probably the closest we've had since that would maybe be, like, I don't know, Stranger Things or Game of Thrones, I don't know. But we just haven't had anything to that level. I would say the people who really are missing out on this is probably Gen Z, I would say, like, early Gen Z, or maybe just Gen Z in general, because they kind of grew up in an awkward time where, like, network television and other movies were, like, kind of going on the down slope in terms of popularity and quality, and, like, smaller content creators were starting to get their names. I would say it was like an era of crowning new kings, almost, like Mr. Beast, or Miss Rachel, or I don't know, what are those two brothers that I don't even remember their name. They're Logans, the Pauls. It's probably good that I forgot those names. That's great. But regardless, that was like an era where, like, new kings were being crowned. So it might get better for, Gen A, because it sounds like they have a more, they are kind of watching the same things. The ecosystem is less volatile now, basically, in the land of content creation, where, now it's basically, like, big names. Every Gen A, member probably knows Mr. Beast and things like that and watches those videos. So I think maybe the younger generation will still have this sense of community, because it's just really nice when you can just share in, like, a shared cultural experience. It's so weird that coming from, like, growing up in the 90s, I would see references to movies or TV shows that I had never seen, but because they were referenced so heavily, it feels like I have seen those movies too. It's really interesting, like Citizen Kane or whatever. I just remember there being a lot of, like, Rosebud jokes and a lot of, TV shows and whatnot. So it's just really interesting that even if I wasn't, like, indirectly a part of that culture, because it was so popular, I was able to still kind of feel part of that. And I think a good example to this is, like, when you think about something like the Jaws theme, where just, like, the first dun-dun, everyone's on the same page with that, because we all kind of know that's the theme to Jaws. I don't know what the closest to that is nowadays. I don't know, Frozen's Let It Go. But those are for kids, so I feel like it's a little bit different. Now, in order not to sound like a cranky old man, I need to concede that, of course, communities still exist. And at least online, they're probably stronger than ever. You know, whatever niche topic or TV show or whatever you want to be a part of, you can go online and become a part of that, you know, community, that group, whatever. But I just think, while that's great that, you know, you can go online and, you know, people who love, you know, that show Firefly from like 2000 that had like 12 episodes, they can find a little fandom. Me, I love, you know, Metal Gear Solid that basically has been dead since 2015, so I can still, you know, talk to people about that. But there's no substitute for, you know, being able to discuss with people in real life. And I think it's just another, you know, chipping away at the whole, like, sense of community. That whole death of the third place is now, you know, the death of pop culture. But again, I need to admit that, you know, niche culture has only risen. And that is a good thing, but it would be nice to, it would be nice, I guess, you know, maybe this is just trying to go back to a time that's not possible. Because really, when there was these, flashpoints of culture like Seinfeld, Friends, I Love Lucy, whatever, there was only, I don't know, 10 channels to choose from back in, I don't know, the 80s and the 90s. I mean, how many TV channels were there really? And, you know, there was always those, like, prime time slots. So, you know, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock, everybody had to be watching something. And there was only these, you know, 20 shows to choose from. Where now, when it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, we have infinite libraries to scroll from, which, you know, is nice. But again, it just disconnects us. Now, I would say that there's probably 2 places where pop culture is still really relevant, and you can see that out in the real world. And I would say that's 1, sports. I'm not a big sports guy, but you know, it's probably the only thing on television that's still probably making money, that's probably still easy to get advertisements for, is sports. You know, you see people in sports gears, whatever, you know, they can talk about sports. Again, it's just an example of if you share something, you know, like a favorite game, a favorite player, a favorite team, it just opens the door so you can avoid all those like weird, awkward small talk things. And then I would say the next place where there's still like a pop culture, interestingly enough, is video games. Because there's only so many games that get released a year, because there's only so many big publishers, it just means that gamers can only talk about so many things, you know. So right now everyone's going on about the Oblivion remake, because that's a big cultural thing that just, you know, dropped. You know, same with like Nintendo, you know, like I would say that I can talk to many people about Nintendo, old, young, man, woman. It's just nice that, you know, there's still some bastions of shared culture and whatnot. So while I don't find anything inherently wrong with streaming, I just find it sad that, especially like on Netflix, there are movies that seem to be coming out week after week. You know, I'll go online, I'll go on Netflix, I'll see like the top 10 movies. There'll be like one I've never heard before. I'll maybe think about it, you know, not watch it there. I'll go on like a week later, and now I can't even find the movie, you know. It's just like buried underneath all this content. So even if somebody like watched something, I'm trying to even remember, there was like this one that was trending like a month ago about some dad who took his daughter to some concert. I don't even remember the name. It looked interesting. I can't even find it anymore to watch it. But I'm just saying, if you watched that movie, even if it was trending for 1 week, good luck trying to find someone to talk about it if they didn't watch it that exact moment. And I think back to some of the big movie events of the last, you know, couple years, things like Barbieheimer. You know, that was fun. That was a fun cultural event where people were going out, they were dressing up, they were bringing in their friends. It was a cultural event. They tried to do the same thing with like the Gladiator, Wicked, I forgot what they even call it, like Glicked, whatever. And that wasn't as strong. But it's just nice when there is just something to draw people together. That's honestly why I'm surprised that the Snow White remake didn't get more people watching it, because I thought, you know, a bunch of people were just gonna love to hate on that movie and it was gonna like bring people together. But I guess I'm wrong. So do I have a solution? I really don't. It's more of just an observation that kind of makes me sad that there is no, like, just innate shared moment. I guess maybe the closest thing other than sports and video games are memes. But I don't know. While a meme is nice because it can get like the point across, it can make people laugh, everybody can identify it right away, just like some of those other points that I made. It just doesn't hit the same way. You can't really like discuss a meme, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you can share a meme, but it doesn't elicit like a greater conversation the way, talking about like, a big movie like Jurassic Park would. Or again, just talking about like your favorite Seinfeld episode. You can share a meme, you can share a laugh, but it kind of ends there, where if you do talk about something like Seinfeld, there's limitless conversation topics about it. So I really hope that eventually we can level out a little bit and get back to a shared sense of pop culture. Maybe I'm just old, maybe I'm not keeping up with what's current, but I think it goes beyond that. I just don't think you can have popular culture, like true popular culture, in the age of streaming, because for something to truly be, I would consider pop culture, you have to have like a vast majority of the population not just watch it, but actually be into it. This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of entertainment.